Alrighty, guys. Today we are talking about board games, specifically how to host the perfect board game night. Now, recently, or at least, actually at this point, not very recently, but for a while, I've had a couple of not ideal board game nights that I've hosted. So I've taken all the lessons that I've learned from all of those nights and I've tried to compile them into one list of usable information that I can hopefully learn from for the future to make better board game nights. Hopefully, someone else can use this too. Alrighty, so what is the deal? What are we trying to accomplish, and what is going to get in our way of accomplishing that? So, what we want to have happen is we're going to try to get a group of people all to have fun, and we're going to try to get them to have fun by playing a variety of board games. Now, what's going to get in our way? So, in order to play a variety of board games, we're going to need something of a schedule in place to ensure that when we have different amounts of people that we can have a proper board game prepared that will perfectly fit that group of people. That having been said, we want to make that structure and that schedule as loose as possible because we're not creating a tournament here. We don't have match slips and tournament organizers and judges. We don't want people to think that they have to rush through or that they are messing anything up by not playing as fast as possible. Ideally, we don't want people to know that there is a schedule or a structure at all. We want them to just think that they are playing board games at a leisurely, casual pace. So, there's a little bit of an element of full high society masquerade ball you're going to be planning while not having anyone know that that's happening behind the scenes at all. Okay. So, the prep. What do we have to figure out beforehand in order to get everything ready for this ideal board game night? One, we are going to need to know our approximate number of players. Again, you're never going to know the exact number of people because people are either just going to not show up or other people are going to show up, and you're probably not going to end up with an exact number of people that you are aware of any time beforehand. People have got lives and schedules change, plans change, all of that stuff. One thing that is important to note is that the day before, at least generally, if you think you are going to be somewhere in the ballpark of 5 to 10 to 15 people, for each group after that first group of 5, including yourself, you are going to want a co-conspirator. Someone else that you establish the day beforehand while you're still doing prep that they are going to have to work with you and be aware of the schedule to help all the pieces fall into place for the night. So yeah, you got 5 people, you can just run it yourself. You got 6 to 10, you're going to want a co-conspirator. You got 11 to 16, you're going to want 2 people, etc. You're also going to want to know at least the general time frame. You might not know an exact hour, but at least to know if you're working with just an afternoon, if you just got 2 hours, or if you've got an entire day for this event. You're going to want to have that established beforehand. The other thing you're going to want to have established beforehand is some amount of the snack sitch. You are not going to want to have to figure out food in the middle or during a game or in the middle of the event. Now, you don't necessarily have to have it all bought and prepared or anything, but at the very least, just to know and just to tell everyone, hey guys, we're going to be ordering pizza at 9 o'clock. It can just be that simple, but you got to have something in mind so that people are not worried or concerned about if they're going to be able to eat that day based on the circumstance. Okay. Lastly, you're going to need to know you're going to need to have games that you know how to play. And if you have co-conspirators, they're going to need to have games that they know how to play. But once you have all these things, you've got everything you need for a proper board game night. I guess I didn't specify, but you should probably have a place to play all these games as well, which I would recommend tables and chairs, but there's nothing stopping you legally, I don't think, from setting up on like the sidewalk, as long as you're not like preventing handicapped people from walking or something. I don't know. Okay. So this is an example schedule, something that you might like have as a preliminary plan once you know the amount of your approximate number of attendees and your approximate time frame you're going to be working with. Okay, and then we're going to want to start with the givens. So the first given that we know is going to be the case is that the maximum number of people are going to be here from around 8:30 to 9:30. That is when the most stragglers who show up late are going to be here, and that is when like the least number of people who have to leave early will have left by. So now that we know that the maximum greatest number of people are going to be here in this middle time frame, we're going to want to create or prepare some sort of activity for that circumstance. At this point, everyone is probably going to want a chance to mingle, converse, at least meet everyone who they have yet to talk to at the event so far. To accomplish this, we're going to want some sort of party game, some sort of big game, an infinitely scalable game that can accommodate any number of players, i.e. like all the attendees. There's going to be your charades, your Pictionary, your monikers, anything that promotes, boisterousness, loud talking, conversation. You're going to want to avoid a silent game for this middle party moment, because this is when people are going to want to converse and, talk and get everything out of their system and meet and do whatever they want with whoever they haven't got a chance to do that with yet so far. And then now that we know this is going to be in the middle and this is going to be our base, we can build everything else off from this. So now that we know that 8:30 to 9:30, approximately, I think that's like a good time frame for any one solid party game activity. Now we know, well, we can have one of our main games end by 8:30. Now, generally, by a main game, I mean anything. I think the easiest differentiation between a main game and a filler game is like whether or not the box is bigger than a piece of paper, generally. If it's a tiny little box, it's likely a filler game. If it's a bigger box, it's a main game. Now, when I say main game here, I'm talking the most important part of this is the time it takes to play. We're generally looking for about 60 to 90 minutes of playtime for a main game. And since there's going to be a likely extended amount of setup and teaching that is going to have to be done, just to be safe, we're going to set aside 2 hours for these main games. And even with that, it's likely that these are going to go over, and we will talk about contingencies for that later on. But generally, I think 2 hours for a main game, usually enough time to get in one full game. So we can say from like 6:30 to 8:30, we could probably get one solid game in. Before that time, 6 o'clock, when people are arriving, when stragglers are coming in through the door, and before we want to just jump right into anything, we're going to want a good just warm up, teach people that they are capable of learning board games with a quick little filler game. Filler game I define as anything that can be set up, put away, taught, and played all within 30 minutes. So your Skull, your Love Letter, just tiny little games that come in tiny boxes, very low commitment, things that can be dropped if need be. Those are your filler games. These are going to be our warm-ups before big main games, and they are also just going to be used whenever you're waiting for a second pod if they have started to finish their game. In that meantime, you can play a filler game until they are done. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the pod situation and the co-conspirators. For each plus 5 people, games will start like taking exponentially longer the more people you have, and the more people you have to get distracted and to have like side conversations and to do things other than think about and talk about the game. It is just going to like the length of the game is going to get exponentially longer with every added player. So in order to keep games around their recommended playtime, we're going to want to try our best to maintain a 3 to 5 player per game like system. Which is to say, once you hit that 6-person threshold, you're going to want to, like a cell, you're going to want to get into that mitosis stage of division. And you're going to have your co-conspirator lead a second pod in a second game of 3 people. And again, you're going to want to make sure that that is established as a thing that co-conspirator may have to do the day beforehand. And okay, and then after the party game, we're effectively going to repeat this process, use another filler if people have shown up around party game time, get them another little warm-up just to ease them into another real game, a main game, your Catan, your Pandemic, something along those lines, a big old hour-long board game. And what's important about the second main game you're going to want to have established is that this is going to be the game that people leave with a lasting impression with. So you're going to want to make sure that the last game is a game that you like really know how to play and is going to be maximally fun for as many people as possible, and that like you're going to want to always end with the game that will leave people with that sense of like, oh man, I've like got to try that game again. That's what you got to end with. Another thing concerning pods. It's possible, depending on how many people are here for the first half and how many people are here for the second half, you may have 2 pods, both pre and post party game. And if you do, you're likely going to want to shuffle the people in those 2 pods so that people get a chance to play with other people that they haven't played with in the first pod. And yeah, I think that's everything for the example sort of schedule. Okay, so how do you make playing a board game fun? Oh, I just realized just move that a little bit. Okay, so board games. Why are we going to play them when I can go home, I can be on my phone playing Temple Run, I can be on my computer playing Half-Life 2. We're playing a game either way, except on the video version, it's all convenient and all the dumb shuffling and stuff is all done for me. Why am I going out of my way to leave my house to play this board game? Well, that's exactly what we're going to try to lean into, is we are going to want to take all those things that are only possible in a board game and not possible in a video game and really try to lift up those elements. Okay, so we're going to start with the simple things you can do here. For one, just like tiny little tips. Just give everyone a job. Make sure that, this person, tell them they're the dealer. They deal out those cards during these specific times. This person is responsible for shuffling the cards when they need to. This person is the banker. They handle the money situation. Make sure everyone's got a little thing that, makes them pay attention to the game and makes them keep track of what other people are doing. We're really just trying to trick people into having fun, and eventually, if you trick them into having enough fun, or if you trick enough people into it, that'll eventually just become the common consensus reality, and they'll actually start just having regular fun and not trick fake fun. Okay, another little thing that I like to do: arbitrary rewards. Now, conceivably, if you're a multimillionaire, you could just buy like trophies and monetary prizes or something to incentivize people to win. But I ain't got that. So we got arbitrary rewards instead. So, for example, the easiest way, and it's quite goofy too, but like the Legend of the Five Rings, whoever wins this game, you have to refer to them as Grand Emperor of the sun and the heavens and the four winds, or whatever, for the rest of the day. But the arbitrary reward that I've personally gone with, that I am a fan of, is having created a stat sheet, a leaderboard, like a record log of just putting a check mark next to and like keeping track of who has won which game this amount of times. Which again, it is entirely arbitrary and entirely meaningless. Yet, for some reason, when you win a game and you take the pencil and you put that little checkbox into that little section denoting that you won a game, it does feel good. That feel good fake doesn't feel arbitrary and meaningless. I get a little smirk every single time I get to mark off one of those "you won a game" box. And you know what? It'll get people arguing. It'll get people fighting about what does and does not count as winning a game. But if it's getting people emotionally invested to any extent, then to me, I consider that it's succeeding. Okay, so another thing about board games: whether or not you're going to be leaning into the crunch or leaning into the theme. It is pretty much inevitable that by getting any amount into a board game, it is going to people are going to start referring to things more crunchily. Things are going to stop becoming wizards and they'll start becoming blue cubes, and these are going to stop becoming quests and they're just going to start becoming cards. Stuff like that. Eventually you're going to stop using, 4 wizards and sending them on a quest to go defeat Belthizarax, the Dragon Queen, or whatever. And eventually you're going to be exchanging 4 blue cubes for a card to get points. Which, on the one hand, it is, when you see that happening, not necessarily a bad thing. Because that does mean, to some degree, when people start doing that, that means they are interested in the numbers and the logic portion of the game, and they are to some degree invested in winning the game, which is good. That is what we want to see. However, when bad things happen to you, it feels a lot worse when all you're paying attention to is the crunch aspect rather than the theme. Instead of a dragon flying by and eating all your wizards and having that crazy moment and then referencing back to that time, hey guys, remember just 3 turns ago when that dragon ate all my wizards? It'll instead become, cool, I drew a card that means I lose -4 blue resource cubes or whatever. And when you see the cards like that, bad things happening to you is going to be a lot less fun. So I will say, when in doubt and you're choosing between whether or not leaning into the crunch or leaning into the theme of the game, I would always try to err towards the side of leaning into the theme of the game as you play it. Okay, the other thing, what can we do here in a board game that we can't do at video games, is actually enjoy the tactile experience. Having the cards in your hand and shuffling them and, moving the little plastic and metal and wood pieces around the board. You are Gallagher, you are Carrot Top. These are your props. Make sure you can somehow get a good time out of that. Make, the best of that tactile experience as you possibly can. Try to sell that as a fun and good feeling thing or something. Okay, the lastly most important thing, and probably the hardest thing as well, is to choose the right game for the group. So, for example, if the players you see that are currently in your pod that you're going to teach a game to, if you can tell they are the people who are on the more casual side and are not interested in like being at each other's throats, and they want to be able to take their time and talk through every decision with everyone at the table, pull out the cooperative game. Pull out the pandemic where everyone is working together to beat an ultimate goal. On the other side, if your friends are all, if you can tell these are the cutthroat ones that want to take each other's heads and just smash it into the dirt, that's when you pull out Chinatown and you bring out the game where everyone's going to be screaming at each other and yelling and arguing and fighting. And if they're in the middle, if they are the logical type, but they want to win, but they don't want to have to play all these social politics, that's when you break out the worker management Euro game where people, are just setting up their little goldfish solitaire thing and just trying to create the best little system that they can. Okay, food and drink. So when we have this snack sitch figured out, what is the best assortment of snacks we can provide? What we're going to want to shoot for here, first half, we're going to want the light, the healthy, the watery, the celery, the grapes, the things for people to nibble on, to distract them from being hungry, basically, is all we're trying to accomplish with these. Just to have an option on the table for people to pick at and nibble on. Okay, the second half, we're going to want to break out the substantials, the carb-heavy, the sugary, the greasy, fatty, fried foods. We are going to want to use this as a means to restore people's blood sugar, get the energy back in the system, get them, give that little energy boost they need to get through the second half of the event. So I would say generally approximately 3-ish, about 3-ish hours before you're going to want to call it quits is when you're going to want to break out the carb heavy food. Because after about 3-ish hours of shoveling carbs into your face, all that energy that you've just gained, all that blood sugar is going to start wearing off. You're going to start hitting that sugar crash. You're going to want to go home and go to bed after that. So we're going to want to ideally use our food to line up to the best of our ability of what we want people feeling at any given time. Okay, when it comes to alcohol, generally people are going to be more willing to be a railroad tycoon, placing little tracks on a piece of cardboard for an hour if they can at least be drunk while they do it. That having been said, this is it is a balance. You do not want people getting too drunk. This is not the time to break out the jungle juice and get people absolutely sloshed, because any main board game with multiple rules that you have to know and remember is usually incompatible with a certain level of drunkenness. So I would say I would tend towards the lighter drinks, the light beers, the 4 to 5% range. The things that if you actually want to get drunk off of them, you're really going to have to go out of your way. But just to maintain a slight buzz throughout the night, relatively easy by just sipping on a couple of these. Okay, the art of the teach. This is the most vital component. This is where the most things can go wrong. This is the real make it or break it test for any board game experience. So, when it comes to the art of the teach, I fully and 100% subscribe to the shut up and sit down method of board game teaching. So first of all, you are going to want to have played the game before. If you don't have people to play the game with you as a test beforehand, then literally set it up, make a demo, play all the people around the table, play all their parts, just so you know that you can get through a game of, the board game. You don't necessarily have to be a master of every single rule, but yeah, at least you know how to set it up, know how to play it, know how to get through one game. Okay, then you're going to want to ask the 3 big questions. Who, how, why? The who are we playing as? We are the settlers of Catan, and we are colonizing this island and building settlements and cities here. Okay, how do we win? You win by being the first person to get to 10 victory points. You get victory points by building settlements, by building cities, by having the longest road, and by having the largest army. And the most important question, why is this going to be fun? This is going to be fun because we're going to be trading resources with each other to build these various settlements and cities. You are going to eventually, there are going to be times where you're going to have to plead and beg for people to make trades with you. There are times where you are going to be arguing and trying to convince people to not make certain trades. There's going to be times where you're going to have to get clever with your trades and not just trade resources, but trade promises. And you're going to have to, sometimes you're going to have to embargo people and work together with your other people who are losing to make sure that the person who is winning doesn't get any good trades. Okay? That's why this is going to be a fun game. Now, so the intro, pretty easy. The nitty gritty is where things start to get really tough when it comes to the board game night. This is where you can really either get lost in the sauce or whatever the opposite, however that one gets, however that meme goes. So it's vital for this whole introduction and for this whole teaching process. You are going to want one teacher, and if you have other people who know how to play the game, they are naturally going to also want to be teachers, and they are going to jump in and try to teach things. You are going to want to establish before you start even teaching the game that you want to avoid this happening. And you are going to want to have them help you by being what Shut Up and Sit Down called your flight attendants. And, if you could tell these are the type of people who might be offended by being referred to as flight attendants, maybe you could make them your middle managers. But you want one person teaching the game without anyone else cutting in and trying to almost have this little fight where you guys are both trying to teach different things in the game. And this flight attendant, this middle manager, can help you out by picking up cards and showing different parts of a card. Or they can set up demonstrations. They can show parts of the board, show different tokens, how the different tokens and cards interact as the one teacher is explaining the rules. And vitally, when you teach the game, you are going to want to be confident and be excited. If you are not excited to teach and have all these people play the game, they are not going to be excited to, want to learn and to play the game. So you got to have the energy high level very high when you are teaching the game. And the confidence thing, that also goes along with the one teacher. If there's multiple people saying, well, shouldn't we explain this? Good point. Yeah, I guess, we'll explain that. But before, I guess we should explain this. And then, well, maybe before that, should we explain that afterwards? Or no. You should explain that, and then we can explain this. You don't want that. You do not want to erode trust and erode faith in the teacher. You want this to be one seamless, flowing process. And to add on to that, in order to get into the nitty-gritty of the rules, you start with the things that they need to know just to do the first turn, and then you add on all the elements on top of the fundamental rules that they have to know. You know that you cannot explain the robber and the trade ports of Catan before you even explain how you acquire resources and what you need those resources to do. Okay, so the contingencies, you know, be like water, you know, go with the flow. It's really kind of impossible to put any real contingencies here because everything is going to be extremely context dependent. You know, there's going to be situations where you guys have just started a main game and you've gotten too far into it to just give up on it now. And then you're going to have like one or two people show up who don't know how to play any games that you weren't like, you know, prepared for. And you're going to have to make a call. It might be dropping out of this game in the middle of it, which may potentially ruin the game for everyone else there in order to start a new game with these other people. You know, it is entirely based on the people who are there, what you think will happen if you pull that move, and just once you make that move, you got to be confident and stick with it. You know, I guess other things that I want to talk about. This is ideally board game night, but sometimes, you know, as the host, it is your job to make sure that as many people are always feeling included and having fun as possible for as much time as possible. Okay, so sometimes this is going to involve, you know, you get to the party game part of the night, and sometimes as the host, you are just going to realize you're going to get the vibe from everyone that this night will be better off if we scrap the second half of board game night and just, you know, get drunk and play charades until 6 in the morning. And, you know, it is your duty as the host to follow those laws of hospitality. You know, it's your duty to get drunk and play charades until 6 in the morning. But yeah, that's just to say, you know, you got to be ready for your plans to fall through because things that you couldn't expect are going to happen and you're going to have to work around it. You know, it's just important to give everyone that sense that you were prepared for this the whole time. So that is everything I've had about the ideal board game night. Hopefully I can put this into practice and create an ideal board game night soon in the future. I suppose we shall see, and I'll let you know how that goes. Farewell.